Hello and welcome to another episode of Shadow of Love. I'm Holly, your co-host, writer, intimacy coach, lover of all things spooky and great white sharks, also a member of the Professional Heathen Society, and I'm here with my co-host, Ernest. Hey, Ernest.
Hey, Holly, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I am Ernest. I am proud to be the co-host of this venture, which is so loosey-goosey. I am a Southern cuisine chef, a restaurant manager, hotel manager, a thick thigh enthusiast, a lover of all things soul, full of soul, and glad to be here today.
Glad you're here too.
Oh, I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want to be anywhere but here today.
Right. Me too. Just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Orgastronomy and Unbound New Mexico. And today's topic is love and divorce, part 1. I don't even know if we're going to count the amount of parts that we might talk about this topic, but this is the first. And for our kind of territory today, I think we're going to look at how to know when you need a divorce. Like, when do you pull the trigger? So I'm going to punt it off to you, Ernest, because I know you have notes.
Nah, you know what? I wrote all this stuff down, like how do you know, and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? I think I've gone through this before. So I think you kind of, divorce is funny because once you start thinking about divorce in your marriage, you're already kind of acknowledging that it kind of needs to end, or the end is near, or the end is a possibility, right? Like you're at a weird crossroads of like, you're still in love with the person. You still care about this person deeply or whatever, but like maybe you've exhausted the possibilities of staying together. You know what I mean? Because divorce, once it gets in your head, it can either become like a snowball that goes down a hill and becomes an avalanche, or you can, climb that mountain and fix the shit that's on top of it before it gets to that point. So I think it's really hard because once you have the idea of divorce, there's something wrong with your marriage, right? Like, that clearly there's something wrong, because once you start saying, hey, divorce, as opposed to staying together or going through your shit, once you put that in your head, it's there.
It's a hard thing to shake.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to shake. And it's also, like you said, it's, once you pull the trigger, and again, some marriages end that way, and we don't, we're not professionals. So please don't try what we do at home. I'm just saying that, like, once you, how can I put it? If you're in love with somebody, if you're in a marriage, and marriage can be hard by itself, like any marriage has its, good days and bad days. I tell people, like, marriage is like, it's either good or it's bad, or it's meatloaf on Tuesday. Like it has these high pitches of, like, these really good points, these really bad points. And you're not stuck together, but it's just like you're coupled and you're dealing with your shit. Right. So I don't know. I think, I don't know. Divorce is one of those things. I've had a few. I've had a couple divorces now. So from a man's point of view, once you get to the point of saying that you need to separate or divorce, you have to be, like, prepared for what's to come, right? Like, once you start going down the road of thinking about it, and maybe you even talk to your spouse about the shit before you decided to do it. You know what I mean? And then, like, when you once you say to your spouse, like, yo, you think we should get divorced, your marriage automatically changes at that point. You know what I mean? Like once you say divorce, once you put that word on the table, which is a big ass word, like love is a big word, which has gravity. Divorce is a big ass word that has gravity, and both of them have consequences, right? So once you start talking to your spouse about divorce, you can either say like, yo, is this reparable? Can we fix this or whatever? And you may not want to go down the road of fixing it. You know what I mean? Like you just might want to bounce, or maybe fixing it is too much. I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird in that way to me. So what I would say, if you're thinking about divorce, there's a couple of things that you need off the top. If you're starting to think about divorce, you're going to need a good therapist. You're going to need the counsel of good friends, right? Like good folk, right? And you may need to start talking to an attorney, right? To just get your ducks in a row and keep your mind right. So all those things I think are relevant to it. So I don't know. It's for me in the past, it's been messy. And then for me in the past, it's been clean. So I don't know, like no divorce is pretty, but I would say to people, once you start thinking about it, prepare yourself for it. Like prepare yourself either way. Prepare yourself to either stay and fix your shit, or prepare yourself to bounce. Right? Because once you start thinking about bouncing, your partner is thinking about you bouncing too.
Well, and
right?
they might be thinking about bouncing as well.
Yeah. So you never like, that's the thing. Like you never know what your spouse is thinking on the other end of it and who they're talking to, especially like, I'm not going to say women. Like in the past, I've talked to people about like, yo, I'm thinking about getting divorced or whatever, or, separating, and, didn't pull the trigger. And I think I was supposed to. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think you don't want to get to a point like before you get divorced where it gets ugly. Right. Like divorce is ugly anyway. Divorce is just fucking ugly. Doesn't matter how much money you have or whatever, or, your financial status or, your social status or whatever. It can be messy as fuck. Even an amicable one. Right. Which is funny to say, like amicable divorce. There's still no such thing and shit. Like somebody's going to come out on the other end different. You know what I mean? Financially, emotionally, and socially, because like, yo, when you go through a divorce, you split friends too, right? Like there's a lot of shit that goes into this shit. Like once you start thinking about it, it's weird. Would I marry again and divorce again? Fuck no. Right. It's like two things I would never want to do again is get married or get divorced. Right. And plus, like the thing about marriage is like you're in a shitty casino once you start down that road anyway. Like you're in a shit casino because most marriages end with divorce anyway. So like you're already in a possible finite position, in an agreement rather, like, because like more than half of these motherfuckers fail. Like 55% of the marriages in the United States fucking fail. So like you already signed up to fail, right? Potentially. Not to sound like a cynic, these things end badly sometimes or whatever. So I don't know. I wish you luck.
Well, to kind of bounce off what you're saying, and maybe to take it back, like, do you think, I personally believe that at least in our current culture, still, I think that there are expectations placed on what a marriage should be that when you actually get into those relationships at times, it's a very hard thing to sustain, right? I think that particularly because we have such a strong society of people with religious leanings, that it's a push to make it work at any cost. It's a push to make sure that you are trying to maintain something, even if it brings you unhappiness. And I think we're often taught that marriages should be a solution to making ourselves happy in a variety of ways that marriages maybe can't hold the weight of. And so when we have all these like really hefty expectations for a relationship, that over time, as you grow and change as people, it's like just adding more and more weight to a bridge that wasn't engineered to hold all of that necessarily. And so I think you either, like you said, once you get to that place, maybe some people are really good at figuring out that the bridge was getting too heavy early on, and they go to couples counseling and they're able to correct, and they're able to figure out a way to maintain their autonomy while being a couple. Because I think at the end of the day, the struggle really comes down to, how can I remain as an autonomous person and get what I need to make me happy, and have my partner support me in that, and me also be able to support them, and us both get what we need, which is a lot. Like you have to have a really good communication foundation and be willing to be really kind of brutally honest with each other. And I think that that's hard for a lot of marriages for a variety of reasons. Or it gets to that point where it's too much, and then people are backtracking, trying to figure out what they can remove. And then if they can't figure it out, it just collapses and it's gone. Right. And maybe you can rebuild it. Like these people who kind of divorce and remarry like years later trip me up, because I'm like, God damn, there are billions of people in the world and you are still fucking with that same person. Billions of people in the world. So I don't know. And I think that we have this like weird meta notion of we have to have a soulmate, and there has to be this one person that, we kind of connect with. And so it's a lot of pressure for relationships. And I think marriage just makes it worse. And I also think people look at marriage as an investment to some sort, particularly if you have like this big, huge festival celebration where, people become invested in your relationship because you invite them to do that. And then it's an expectation you should be able to carry that forward. And people don't talk about the messiness a lot. A lot of it's about the happiness and the joy and the Disney fairy tale, which is total bullshit. And it's not enough about like, how do we actually function in a relationship, and why are we here? And why do we potentially have these little people that are now part of this relationship, which adds a whole other level of stress if you have kids in a relationship.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, it's just like you said, it's almost like being set up to fail to some degree, but yet it's this push that we continually make as a society that like, this is the path that you should go on. And, I look at a lot of the dialogue that's been happening, and I'm not going to talk about this barely at all, because it's, I'm not going to get into the stuff about like the actual Oscar stuff, but the relationship with Will and Jada, and how much of their like marriage and relationship stuff has been pulled into a totally separate topic because people are so uncomfortable with the notion of polyamory, and people are so uncomfortable with the fact that they have a non-traditional marriage that they've chosen for themselves, and they can't even deal with like something else with them as a celebrity couple without pulling that into the conversation and making that part of the conversation. And so to me, it's just ridiculous that should have any place at all in the dialogue around that, because it's a totally separate topic. And if people are able to sustain their marriage in a way that makes them feel comfortable and makes them feel seen and happy, and they're both okay with it, I think people just need to shut the fuck up, honestly.
I would say, don't commodify your marriage, right? Like, don't, first off, like Hollywood marriage ain't real, right? It's like other marriages, like regular 9-to-5 folk marriages, fail at the same, I think maybe at a lower rate than celebrity marriages or whatever. But like, once you commodify your marriage, right? Like, you put it out there for everybody to see, you post your shit, you have a show about your marriage, you make I find that shit annoying, personally. I just do. I'm a very private person, save the podcast that we do. But like, if you're making your marriage, if you have like sponsorship for your marriage, you know what I'm saying? Like, my marriage is brought to you by Hasbro or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? I'm in love. And I also love Purina Cat Chow or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? It's not, I'm not going to say it's not real. I'm just saying, like, I think that certain things should be private, right? Like how you love somebody, how you conduct the business of your marriage, the day-to-day shit of your marriage, I think should be private. I think once you put it out there for the world to see, you've let too many people in, and everybody has an opinion.
The only thing I would challenge about this notion of not having things out in the open about marriages is that I think, well, there's a couple things. One is I think it makes it harder for younger generations to kind of see the authenticity and the realness of what needs to go into establishing and maintaining that kind of relationship when you keep it, under lids. And I mean, and I come from a family where secrets were like the norm. And we didn't talk about relationships. I knew there was some really fucked up stuff in the relationships that I saw the women in my family going through, but we never had conversations. Like, my grandmother's gone now, but that's a conversation at this age I really wish I could have with her that I never got to have because she passed away suddenly. So you have that. And I also think to some degree, the idea of keeping quiet about what happens in a relationship is a notion that tends to benefit men more than it benefits women. And when you have so many relationships where there is toxicity and abuse and domestic violence in particular, the idea of keeping things under wraps and keeping things quiet really lends to perpetuating systems that, for the most part, are oppressive to women. And so I think that you can have intimacy that's private and that should stay private. But I think that overall, we really need to start being a little bit more honest about having conversations. And I do with my kids all the time about, what does this really look like? If you want this in your life, be prepared that this is what this is going to mean. I'm in the process of a divorce right now, and it's like, okay, this is what it costs to hire a lawyer. This is what it looks like when I have to sit and account financially for all these things. Like, this is the time that you have to spend to go through and do all these things. And I'm in a pretty simple divorce. And my kids are like, oof, I don't know if I want to be married. And I'm like, you don't have to be. You can have a relationship with someone, and that can last 20, 30 years. And you don't necessarily need to sign a paper to make that happen. And so just kind of challenging those views, because I think for myself, marriage is a lot less sacred than people make it out to be. And that's kind of my personal opinion on that. I think keeping things sacred and intimate is what you put into it, no matter what the circumstances are legally. And if we put a little bit less emphasis on the need to have a marriage as a sign of, you know, loyalty or commitment or love, I think people would be a lot happier. So I look at marriage very similar to the job market, right? Where you have this notion that if we had universal health care in this country, there would be people who are less tied to jobs that they really don't like and that aren't fulfilling and that make them unhappy because the only reason they stay in them is to be able to access this benefit. And I think that marriage is very similar. And if we took away this notion that marriage is what signifies, you know, something that you need to have in order to have an established relationship, when you're in a relationship and making that choice day in and day out to be in that relationship, in spite of, you know, not having a piece of paper that says you have to me, that signifies a greater depth of intimacy. And then it also allows people, if they're really unfulfilled and unhappy, to be able to, you know, part ways without it being a drag out, knockout, and without, you know, lawyers being the vultures they are and coming in and taking advantage of that. And that's kind of my hot take on some of that. I think that just the more openness we could provide around some of the discussions around what marriage really looks like and entails might give people freedom to be able to say, maybe I don't want to choose that for myself. Maybe I want to choose to be in a relationship that I commit to because I want to commit to it and not because, you know, Jesus tells me I have to, or my mom tells me I have to, or some other organization and establishment tells me that this is the way that I have to do this. Because the back end of it, like you said, is a fucking bitch. Divorce is a bitch.
Oh no, I'm like, my thing is like, people don't realize, like, after I remember I was in a wedding years ago. It was a beautiful wedding. And I remember saying like words after, you know, like the toast and all that good stuff. And I was sitting like watching all these people, everyone's dressed up and it's a real festive and there's, you know, the gift table and no one ever says like, I wonder who's going to get the toaster when this shit goes awry. You know what I mean? Like nobody thinks about the fact that like, yo, years from now, these people might separate or divorce or whatever. There's going to be an ending to this shit. But like people don't realize like how hard the day-to-day grind of marriage is. Like no one tells you that shit. Like people will say like, yo, it's work or whatever. But like they don't detail like how hard it is to make somebody else besides yourself happy. Right. No one tells you. First off, people think there's a lot of sex in marriage. That's a whole other story. But like the day-to-day grind of marriage, especially like if you have kids, because if you have kids, you're automatically the co-star of your life anyway. You know what I mean? Like the things that you want and desire kind of play in the background more than they play in the front because you have to, you know, take care of a kid, which that's 24/7. And, you know, you have your house and your stuff that you have to maintain, and that's 24/7. And then you have this, you know, your life partner that if you're doing it right, you're trying to make them happy and you're trying to make yourself happy, you know, as a couple, which requires 24/7 too. So you're automatically pulled in different ways. And it's a lot of fucking work. And nobody tells you, like, you're going to have to be. I had a friend of mine tell me years ago, he was like, nobody gives a fuck. Right? Just like that. Nobody gives a fuck. And that means like you're working very, very hard to try to maintain your life. And I think at some point or whatever, like I have, you know, seen my friends go through divorces before I went through mine. No one is ever totally forthright on the effort that it takes to maintain this shit. even in a good marriage, right? So I think once you get to the point, like I was saying before, you have to have these boxes checked, right? So like once you start saying you have to, like, you want to end it, you have to be ready for it in an emotional and financial. First off, your emotional shit is the most important, right? So you have to have in place, like I tell anybody and everybody, like, you know me, like, get a therapist. Start talking to your therapist about how you really feel. Talk to your partner about how you really feel. But you really have to have yourself in the right frame of mind to start going down the road of divorce. Because if you don't have the right emotional fortitude to do it, you will fall apart. And you're going to fall apart anyway at some point. You'll have moments of grief in this shit, but like, you have to have somebody there that's not your friend or family member. You have to have somebody who's an observer, like a therapist, to really bounce your shit off of in a way that, like, in a non-judgmental way, and be totally honest in the process when you go through it. Because if you're not honest with your therapist, you're wasting your fucking time and your money, and you're wasting your therapist's time. So like with me, I talked to my therapist about, like, was I ready to get divorced? I was ready, but I wasn't ready for the way everything happened. I won't go into all that, but like, going through it, I think I'm handling it much better now with a therapist and, good friends and a good network of people. I'm handling it a lot better than I've seen some other people handle it. And I've seen, like, quote unquote strong men go through divorces and talk shit and fall apart at the same time. Right. So I've chose the path of mental health professionals to help me with going through it. I'll always have a therapist until the day they throw dirt on me. But like, in the moment that I'm in, like going through a divorce, gotta have a therapist, gotta have good counsel, gotta have people around you who are honest. Even if like you fucked up or whatever, you gotta have somebody there to say, man, you fucked up, and you gotta own your shit. Right. So I think part of it is just like owning your shit and being able to say, it's like a Stevie Wonder song. This is a line in one of his songs where it's like, lately I've been staring in the mirror, very slowly picking myself apart. That's what I'm doing. Right. And I would suggest to any man or any woman, but like, just from a male point of view, from a black man's point of view, you have to be able to say what you're good at and what you fucked up, and be real honest about it and own your shit. Because I think that'll be the only way, emotionally, that you'll be able to get through it and come out better on the other side before you endeavor in any other romantic interests or whatever, like before you start over or whatever. And that's something I'm shit right now I'm struggling with that. But yeah, you have to have the right people, right? You have to be able, like, in your mind, like financially, that's a whole other story. That's a whole other fucking episode. But like off top, you have to be honest with yourself, honest with the people around you, forthcoming to a degree, because everything isn't for everybody. But I think everything is for your therapist. I think if you're in the church, and you got to give it to God, then you got to give it to her. But I think that God only helps you to a certain degree. So you have to do some of the legwork yourself. Like, you can leave some shit on the altar, but like, there's still some things that you have to work with too, because you have free will. But yeah, make sure you got a good shrink. Make sure that the homies around you are positive folk. And the ones that aren't positive, you kind of got to put them on the curb and come back later, or if at all, because this shit, like divorce, can break you in a way that, like, I'll put it like this, like me personally, I'm like, I feel like a vase or whatever, a vase that was dropped and like glued back together. Like that's the whole thing. Like you got to glue yourself back together, and you can still, like, I feel like I'm gluing myself back together like pretty good because I'm in a good environment and I have good people around me and I have, therapy and friends and, an occasional bourbon. And I feel good, but like if you poured like water into me right now, like you would see some leakage. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, like I'm doing a good job gluing myself back together. And that's the thing that, like, for men, especially, men of color, we do this, men from a certain generation, we do this thing, like we say that we're okay a lot. And I would tell anybody, like, going through a divorce, especially if you have kids and, and you've been with this person for a long time, don't fucking lie and say you're okay. You're not okay. You're going through something and you're damaged, but you just have to own your damage and like figure out what can be fixed, man. And like, and some shit you just can't fix, right? And some shit you can, right? Work on the shit that you can fix, right? And then like keep revisiting that shit that's broken until like possibly you can either fix it or say, well, shit, I just don't need that anymore. Or you have to be honest with people and say, like, this shit right here about me is fucked up and I don't know if I can fix it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I'm at with it. As far as like the emotional end of it, like, I think men have to be really, really careful because like, this is the shit that a lesser man, either it'll take years off your life. To be quite honest, I think it'll take years off your life if you're not willing to like do some real work on yourself with this shit. Right. That's why I keep saying therapy, 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 and a good circle of friends. You know what I mean? And a good circle of family. Right. And maybe some weed and some bourbon.
There you go. Did you have like a definitive moment in your relationships where you like thought to yourself, well, like, this is it. I can't continue in this path anymore. Cause for me, it's been like, it just kind of creeps up and I sense it and I've thought about it. And then it comes to like this moment of climax of some sort where I'm just like, okay, this is the point. I can't go back any further. Like moving forward, it's not an option to maintain. Like I know with my my first marriage, and I don't even really consider it a marriage because it was technically a marriage of convenience. I had my older kids with my first husband, and he was a Mexican citizen, and I was down there with him for a year. I had my kids down there, and then I had to come home because I was having really rough health issues, and I just could not take care of my babies on my own. It was just such a hard way to live because we were very poor, and just, it was rough. It was so rough. And so I came home, but my kids were born like 3 months before September 11th. And so after that point, it was so hard to get people to be able to come up for anything related to relationships. So it took us a year to get that paperwork together. And by that point, like, I mean, our relationship was pretty much kind of dead in the water. He was upset that I had left. He was upset that he had been away from the kids for a year. I had been doing everything I could, but the process was so slow. And for anyone who tells you that people just need to enter this country illegally, if you have not done the paperwork that is required to try to be able to come into this country, I think you just need to shut the fuck up. It is so hard. And it is so hard. And I'm a well-educated person, and I struggled with the language of the documents, the amount of documents, the amount of money you have to be able to get that person up here because there's exams, there's all kinds of stuff. So by the time he got here, like we were really, it was a struggle. And I married him knowing like, okay, I'm doing this because if I can maintain this for this length of time, then he will have the opportunity to get citizenship on his own. And that way, and I really did it for my kids, right? Because the thought was then that way my kids will have access to their father. And we were less than 6 months in, and he had steadily he was emotionally abusive, but it was getting to the point where it was leaning almost towards physical, like he was breaking stuff in the house. And we had a really bad argument, and he broke a table in the house. And I was locking myself in my bedroom each night. And I was just like, that's it. I can't move forward. And I had tried to talk to him about divorce. And for me, it was like, neither one of us is happy. I don't want you to be unhappy. And if this isn't working for us, I would much rather see you happy than be miserable with me. Just like I don't want to be miserable with you if this isn't working. And he refused to talk about it. And that was my point. That night for me was the pinnacle of where I knew, okay, I can't do this any further. And that ended up being just a whole shit show of a situation too. And I literally had to pack my house when he was at work on a Saturday and move out to feel any kind of safety and like go and stay with family and stuff. And he ended up a few months later leaving the country, and I haven't seen him since. It's been 18 years, I think, since my kids. So yeah. So it was a very volatile situation. But then with my second marriage, it's like, I just knew there was discontent. I felt like I was trying to grow as a person in one direction. And my ex is a little bit more content with, I think, just maintaining the status quo. I'm definitely more of a risk taker. I'm that person in a relationship where if someone came to me and said, I really want to try to do like this business, but it's risky and it's scary, I'd be like, okay, how can we make this work? Because I believe in that stuff. And I believe in people trying to figure out their happiness. And I know that those things can be really hard and it can be tough to navigate, but that's who I am. And he was a little bit different. He was much more about status quo and, just kind of wanted to have that stability. And I think we just kind of grew apart. And there wasn't really like a triggered moment where I thought, well, I'm going to divorce this person. And then we got in an argument on Christmas Eve, and he pulled that trigger and was like, that's it. After the holidays, we're done. And I realized inside, like I kind of sighed internally and was like, okay, it's on the table now. And then I was like, okay, then we're done, and it just proceeded. And I don't know that was his intention at the time. And we had tried couples therapy and that hadn't quite delivered anything for us. I think he might have said that, with more rashness. But for me, it was like, I was able to finally relax and be like, okay, if I want to walk away from this, because we had, 2 children together, then I feel comfortable at this point being able to do that, because clearly, I'm not the only one who is struggling. And that ended up being that moment. My current marriage, I mean, I tried really, really hard to get my soon-to-be ex-husband to couples therapy a lot sooner. There were some extenuating circumstances. And if you're in a marriage where there's any kind of substance abuse or misuse, I think it makes things much more confusing and a lot harder to navigate than people can ever realize, because you see 2 different people, right? It's just like you have the person when they're sober and when things are going well, and that's the person that you've fallen in love with. And then the person who isn't that person, it's just so confusing. It's a really hard thing to kind of get through. And I just I hit a point with the last relapse where I was like, I literally just can't do this anymore. I can't be in this kind of anxiety. I can't be in a space where I'm worrying about when the next shoe is going to drop, what impact that has to me or to my family and to this person. And like, I just was so much to carry. And that burden for me was just way, way too much. And I just was like, that's it. And you know that, Ernest, because you and I, you were on the tail end of seeing me struggle with that. And
Yeah.
seeing me want to, oh, I'm going to get a little emotional. Seeing me want to really, really make that work. And sometimes you really can't. Like, you can love someone as much as you possibly can and want them to love you as much as they possibly can, and know that that's still not enough, because the dynamic of that love just becomes toxic, you know, because it's not a healthy environment to begin with. Because you really, if you're going to maintain a relationship, you both have to be committed to keeping yourselves healthy in that relationship too, for each other. And when one person isn't doing that, it makes it so much harder. So it's interesting how you can have like these very defined moments, or you can just have these things kind of sneak up on you and you just realize, yeah, like I think that's it. I think I'm ready to be done. Was there anything like that for you?
Oh, I've had that. Like my first marriage, I think, which I don't really talk about much, whatever, publicly. I got married too young, right? It wasn't that I didn't love the person who I married. I still care about her, but I was just too young, right? I was that's where I was with that. Like I was too young, too fucking cute, too arrogant, and I still had shit I wanted to do out in the streets, right? And I regret taking that person down that road with me throughout my bullshit. Would I do it again to somebody? Nah, I wouldn't do that shit again. But I mean, I got married because I was in love with that person, right? Like everything, all the other shit didn't matter to me. But then at the same time, you know, I was 23, 24, way too young to be married, I think. And I still had some living to do, if you want to call it living. And, you know, I ran the streets a lot. My occupation put me in the streets, not in the streets, but put me in social settings where I had, you know, access to do whatever the fuck I wanted to do with whomever I wanted to do it with. And I was very inconsiderate and very immature. And I think I blame myself for a lot, but also do this thing where I'm like, okay, you know, I was just too young. That's all. I was just too young. And would I do the same thing now? Would I behave now the way I behaved back then? Fuck no, because I'm older, right? I'm older, and I would never want to subject anyone to my behaviors back then, right? I was an asshole, and I'm still trying to make some of those things right with people that I've hurt in the past or whatever. So I don't know. I would just say to people, if you have any doubts before you get married, don't get married. Right? If you're standing there on the altar, like, you know, feeling like I'm gonna fuck this up, like, not that life is gonna fuck your marriage up, because, you know, shit happens in your life or whatever. But like, if you have any doubts before you get married, you should probably entertain those more than putting them to the side. That's what I would say, because whatever doubts you have, or whatever the fuck, like whoever you are, you know, when you get married, some of those things don't change, right? So if you have a wandering eye, and you got married, your eye is still gonna wander. If you still got curiosity and shit in you, then you're gonna find yourself in some situations to try to, like, you know, scratch that itch of curiosity. You just are. I'm not saying that you're gonna want. I'm not gonna say that you're actively gonna do it, but you're gonna find yourself in situations where, I know, like in past relationships where shit wasn't right or whatever, I would cheat. You know what I mean? I would cheat because I could, and it made me feel, I don't know if it made me feel better or worse or whatever, but it was just something that I can do. Maybe it was spiteful and gratifying in the moment or whatever. And like, that's what I did in my first marriage. And I would never do that shit again. I'm extremely apologetic to whom I shared that experience with, to this day. So like in my current state, some of those things that I did in the past, I didn't do in this one, but I was certainly no angel and I wasn't perfect. I can't really, go into that too much because it's in the moment. And I've been advised by counsel not to share that shit in a public forum. So this part of the show is brought to you by Zahn Law Office, located in beautiful seaside Ventura, California. That's Zahn Law Office. Ask for Donna.
It's so true, though, that if you have doubts, like I said, in my first marriage, like I knew that was a marriage of convenience, but I really thought I was doing right by my kids. And I would also preface and say that you want to give your kids the best example of what healthy love looks like. So if you're staying with anything because you think it's going to benefit your kids and it makes you miserable or makes your partner miserable, both of you miserable, then you're really not modeling anything beneficial for your kids in the long run. And you're not teaching them that when things aren't good for them, that they can leave them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing for kids to learn. With my current husband, I had some red flags. I wasn't fully aware of, with his issues with substance abuse and misuse. I wasn't fully aware of where that was at when we got married. And once you get in it, it's like, it's really hard to be like, wow, I probably shouldn't have done this, at any point. Right. I mean, it's just, our society puts so much on that notion that getting divorced is a failure. Whereas, like, to me, it's really just personal growth. If you can recognize that something is no longer serving you and you're able to say, I deserve better than this and I deserve something else.
I think it's a mix of both, right? Like, yeah, like your marriage, like it's divorce is failing at something. I mean, to a degree, but it might be for good reasons too.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, you could be taking a pottery class and you're failing at your first 50 bowls because that shit's hard. But no one's going to sit there and like tell you, well, you have to stay with it for the rest of your life. And you're committed to making these bowls. You know what I mean?
Failing at this bowl is costing me $3.50 an hour.
Exactly.
Fuck.
So
it's an expensive pottery class.
Right. It's just, it's that notion that somehow like marriage is exempt from other kinds of failure. And I completely 100% agree with you that you need friends who are going to support you in your decision and really kind of stand by you and make sure that you as a person are being taken care of in that time.
Yeah.
And just listen without objectivity and not bring their own ish into it. I mean, sharing's one thing, but bringing your own kind of stuff into somebody else's stuff, it confuses the person who's trying to figure things out. When we had been married and we planned like this wedding ceremony, and we were having it at a house of someone who is no longer anyone that I have in my orbit as a friend. And I, it was such a nightmare. Like the whole wedding plan. I'm not a big wedding person to begin with. And it was the first time I was having any kind of celebration. And that was hard enough. And it was really small. I mean, it wasn't anything even major, but I really felt like I was kind of doing it alone. And there were certain things that my husband had committed to providing. And then we got to the week before the wedding, and he ended up having an issue where he was just not functional for that week due to some of his substance stuff. And it was like me going into work every day trying to figure out how this stuff was going to work and crying in my office. And I had my former supervisor was the best, and she had family history with substance stuff, so she was a really good person to like just listen. But I had another friend, and I went to her, and she was like, well, all men are like this before their wedding. They just don't, they freak out, they do weird things. And it was like I was pushed, because I really was just like, maybe I should cancel this. Maybe this should not happen. Like, this is so stressful. This is just not in my wheelhouse of what I want to be dealing with for an event that's supposed to be full of joy, right? And I really felt like I just kind of got pushed, because with her marriage, she's like, oh, well, my husband didn't participate and I wanted him to do more and he didn't. And I mean, she's divorced now too. So go figure that stuff. Right. So like, leave your ish at the door and just support your person. And I think if someone had said to me, like, it's okay to not do this and to just tell people you can't do this, I would be in a very different situation. And I probably wouldn't have stayed in this marriage as long, because then once you have like a wedding, you feel more obligated to make good.
Because there was a show.
Because there was a show, right?
There was a show.
There was a show. So it really kind of upped the ante on that. And I look back and I know that my husband felt differently, because by the time that day finally rolled around, he has his shit together, and it was mostly his friends at the ceremony. I didn't have, my family didn't make it for various reasons. And other than my kids, I had like a few people there, but it was mostly kind of more for him. And it was his first marriage. And I just remember like feeling completely distraught and miserable up until about the time that I had to walk out and do the ceremony part. And it just, I don't look back on that day with, I think, the kind of feelings you're supposed to have. Like, even getting the photos, I've never sat and gone fully through the photos from that day. I've gone through a little bit of it, and I had like a mural wall thing put together for my husband, but like for myself, like I never had like a framed photo from the wedding anywhere. And I have pictures with me and my kids from that day that I do, because that dynamic to me, like, they were really big supports. They were really great. But man, like, I can't even describe, like, when you don't have someone who is there to just be an unbiased listener and just take in what you're saying, and just to be like, if you don't want this, you don't have to do this. And I think that's so rare. So be a good friend. If you have someone struggling, and whatever your opinions are, keep them to yourself. Unless you feel that they're in danger, and then maybe you can say, like, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about how this is affecting you. I want to see you be happy, but just like, otherwise, don't bring your own ish into that. Like, just listen, be there, support,
Either my rule is like, either be supportive or shut the fuck up.
That's a great rule.
For real. Like, I've had, going through divorce or whatever, once you start making the shit public, which it will be anyway. I've had people where, like, you'll find out like who's who in your life I don't think it's just like for like the day of your wedding or whatever, but like the day of you, like when you go through your divorces or whatever, your divorce or whatever, I think you find like, you find out who your real people are, right? So I remember I was telling somebody about my divorce or whatever. And at a time they're very close to me, you know, growing up together, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm going through divorce. And I remember the person said to me in a roundabout kind of way, they were like, I told you so. You know what I mean? Like, I knew this was going to happen. I'm like, you knew this was going to happen 15 years later. Right? Like, how long the fuck have you been waiting to say I told you so to me? Which means like at some point, as opposed to being an advocate and supportive of whatever of our marriage, in their head, they were like, this is going to fail. You know what I mean? Like from the gate, like they already just knew the shit was going to fail and they were just like waiting for the shit to be over with for them to just drop their I told you so on me. And like at that moment, like I didn't get mad in the moment. I mean, I was mad in the moment, but like I listened to them give me their advice or their opinion. And I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to speak to this motherfucker about my bullshit again.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, this is the person who, as opposed to like being supportive, like I said, like an advocate, because like, you know, in life, you need advocates, like, you know, folks are going to be there for the good shit and the bad shit, but always have like a positive outlook. Like if you come into shit with like a negative, fucked up, doom and gloom attitude towards shit anyway, then those are the people, like when you go through your divorce or when you go through your separations, you know, either they'll be supportive, like they may be happy for you or whatever, or they'll bring like, or they'll enjoy watching you be upset. Right. Like, because there's it's something about somebody saying, I told you so, as opposed to saying, oh, that's fucked up. Are you okay? Not like you're looking for pity, but you need people in your circle that are going to be understanding of the gravity of the moment that you're in, because it's a lot. It's a lot emotionally. Like shit, going through my divorce, I think I've lost like 40 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like I don't have food. It's just the fact that like I'm preoccupied with other shit mentally to be like, cheesecake. You know what I mean? So you gotta, man, having the right motherfuckers around you is priceless. And I'm coming to realize too, and we've talked about this, you know, because we talk all the time. Like, I don't believe in fucking happiness, right? I don't believe in that shit. I just don't. That shit is like up there with it's. I don't believe in happiness. I don't believe in white privilege. I don't believe in Santa Claus. I do believe in ghosts, but like, you know what I mean? I do believe in ghosts, but I don't believe in happiness. And here's why. While you're going through this shit, it's a very, you know, it's an emotional roller coaster. You know, going through divorce, you can have days where like, I feel great. But like, even in the background, you're still getting divorced and you've lost somebody in your life that once had meant something to you, right? And, you know, and you might be losing your shit too, like your actual physical material shit. So it's a lot. So you really have to have the people around you that you can share your shit with and say like, hey man, I'm having a rough day. Like this shit hurts today or whatever. And if you don't have the people, because, you know, the thing is too, they may be in that point. Like I said, 55% of these motherfuckers fail. So that your same friend who's in a long-term relationship or a marriage, because that's what we're talking on, like your friend could go through a divorce just like that. You know what I mean? Like these shits can end abruptly on occasion. And you're supposed to be the person that say like, hey man, are you going to be all right? Is there anything you need? Whatever you want to talk about, I'm here for you, whatever. And you got to be that ear. You got to be that shoulder. You got to be the drinking buddy, confidant, all those things. All this shit goes around. So make sure you have motherfuckers in your life that really give a fuck about you. And you'll find out really fast when you go through a divorce of like who's really your friend. You know what I mean? Like who's really your homie, who's really not, who's really family, because family ain't nothing but a 6-letter word. Like who's really your family and who's really not. I am so grateful to, like, Holly, I fucking love you to death. So I ain't gotta tell you that shit. I'm gonna give you flowers all the time. But like I found out over the last year or so who's real and who's not with me. And for those folks who are real with me, shout out to them. But the rest of them can kick fucking rocks. For
No,
real.
and same with you. And I don't think we've ever discussed the fact that this podcast evolved out of us having these conversations starting this summer, where at one point, because sometimes this one's been a little bit more serious, I think, but sometimes we're genuinely funny. And I was like, I think we should just create a podcast. And that's how this all came to be. But you too, as a friend, like I know I have discussed like specific scenarios with you, and you just lent that support, and you were like, hey, I'm here for you no matter what you decide to do, right? And just really framing it in this space of, not dogging anyone's partner, but just like focusing on that person and like, what do you need? Because then, if they stay together, you can still maintain that friendship. And then if they don't, you can always share later a more honest opinion, because you and I have had those conversations too. But I just appreciate like that sense of just feeling like cared for in the moment without judgment and without feeling like I'm doing something wrong in either direction, right? Because I think that's really important, because the honest truth is like, oftentimes with relationships, I think people can see the writing on the wall from the outside a lot sooner than you can from the inside. And I think that's okay, because you're in the midst of it. You have a lot of moving parts, especially if you have like family dynamics that are part of that make it harder to sometimes be like, I got to commit to this decision of not being in this space, right? Because it's an emotional turmoil that really pulls you in a lot of different directions. Whereas people from the outside can maybe see like, yeah, this isn't good, but letting people come to that conclusion on their own is so important, because otherwise, if they don't own that choice, then they may not feel like they did something good for themselves. And that takes it's a lot harder, I think, for people to recover from relationship stuff like that than it is to be like, okay, I feel comfortable with this choice. I feel like I'm doing the best thing I can for myself. And it really is time to be able to move forward. And also just being cognizant that, like, I think we sometimes treat these relationships very flippantly. Marriages are different than just dating someone.
Yeah.
I mean, dating, dating can be sad when things end there too, but you've committed a lot when you're in a marriage, and there's it's an enormous amount of grief to process.
Yeah. I would tell people, like, because married, like my single friends who have beef in their relationships, I immediately tell them, break up with that motherfucker. You know what I mean? Because it's just dumb. Like if you're a veteran, if you're a seasoned marriage veteran, right? And you look at the shit that single people have to go through or subject themselves to, you're like, dude, I wish I could do that shit. I wish I could just break the fuck up. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just weird like that. I would always tell my single friends when they were having shit in their relationships, just break up.
Yeah.
Find a new motherfucker.
You're not obligated to stay.
No, you're not. When you're married, you feel like you have the obligations. You know what I mean? There's a lot more obligation than, dating. Cause like a lawyer is going to be involved about who gets the couch.
Right.
And your kids and that kind of shit. So it's a lot more messy.
It's very messy. And you just, in dealing, and you have to deal with all of that practical stuff and all those moving pieces of potentially leaving your home or having someone leave your home, having that income change. I mean, that's all that too. But then there's just like, your heart is broken. Like you're grieving because even if you may not be in love with that person the same way, you know, and for me with this last marriage, I mean, I was still actively in love with my husband. It was a really, really hard decision to make. So like the grief that comes with that can be so overwhelming. And like you said, like you have those days where it's just like, you don't know what your world is because it's
No.
changed so much. And it's hard to even get out of bed, you know, like the
Yeah.
effort to like feel like you are worthy of love again is a real effort, and it can take a long time. And like, I mean, I'm 4 months into a separation, and like I told you, like I'm not even approaching or touching the idea of even dating for a solid year because I can't mentally go there with myself. And I know that I have work that I want to do, like you were talking about, on myself, because I don't want to bleed over all over someone else. And I don't want any of the messiness of this to even be something that would factor in. And I honestly like don't even know that I want to be in a relationship again. So I don't, like I don't even know what I want for myself. I got to figure that out.
That's other shit right there. Figuring you like me. I, I can't really divulge. I can't really I'll say this. While you're going through it, like it's divorce is a shitty snowflake, right? I'm like, each one of them, like a divorce is a divorce, but like each one is different.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can be shitty. It can be terrible or whatever. It can be, there's days, and it's okay. And I'll tell people this shit in a minute. There can be days, like you said, getting out of bed where you might want to yell fuck into a pillow for 3 hours straight.
Right.
Right. But you get through your day. I'm forever the optimist. I think if you're going to, I think you can find joy where you find it or whatever. And you're right. You got to be, I can't say too much, but like, you got to be careful to not, like you said, to not bleed into some other shit. So like, I would say this, if you're going to date, like my thing has been almost a year. If you're going to date or whatever, you have to be in the right minds. That's a whole other show.
Yeah.
But yeah. That's a whole other show right there. But like, you can't live on bread alone. I'm gonna say that.
No, but you got to give your time process. You have to give yourself time to process the grief and to really wrap your head around like the magnitude of the loss. Because again, even if you're not like actively in love with that person the same way, you still love them to some degree, or you wouldn't have been married to them. I
don't know. I think by the time you get to the point where you're like, with me, like I was, I mean, I can't say too much, but like when you're ready to fucking bounce, I think that you've exhausted, like I said, you've exhausted the idea of being together in that, in the same space anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And, with me, we talk all the time. In certain ways, I'm really, really good. In certain ways, I'm like, that's fucked up. You know what I mean? I'm not here to share everything with everybody as far as that's concerned. But like, if I was to say like, how do I feel like, on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as like, 10 being really, really good and, 1 being the worst, I would have to say in the moment that I'm in now, because it's been so long, it's been a minute, Holly. Shit. I think I'm at like a good 7, like a good strong 7, an aspirational 8. You know what I'm saying? And that required, a lot of soul searching and a lot of
Oh, you've come a
Just,
long way.
yeah, like a
A
lot of
long
like
way.
hard conversations with myself, a lot of hard conversations with family and friends, and like I said, and the therapist, and being like, yo, you're not you're not the you're not as perfect as you look when you're walking down the street. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not I'm not how can I put it? I'm trying to find the right words. I know I wasn't perfect. And I own it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I own the things that make me fucked up when I'm fucked up. And I also have learned how far, and this is true, I've learned how far I'm willing to go. Right. And so I know going forward in new relationships, like, I know my cutoff point for a lot of shit. Well, like the things I'm willing to do and the things I'm willing not to do, and the things I'm willing to accept and things I'm not willing to accept. I know that shit now. And plus, I'm older.
Yeah.
So, you know, so if you're going to date out here, be, be careful, like, I had somebody in my family tell me, this was months ago. This was in the summer and shit when I was first going through it. He was like, life goes on. And I was like, I don't want to hear that shit or whatever. But then, like, shit, life goes on. You never know. Like, you might meet somebody tomorrow that you really fucking dig, but like, take your time with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the last thing you want to be, what makes a vagina dry? um, uh, Talking about divorce at dinner while you're dating. I'm not saying this happened to me. I'm just saying, like, I've heard this should happen. Talking about an ex-wife or an ex-husband with somebody at dinner can make a vagina just dry. So, you have to be able to keep that shit to yourself and compartmentalize it, because if you're dating whatever, the person that you're dating or whatever, even if it's just casual, whatever the fuck, they don't want to hear none of that bullshit. They really don't. So that's the shit you keep to yourself. It's not dinner conversation with a, perspective, uh, with a possible, you know, dating person or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? So, like, keep that shit to yourself. And if you're not ready to keep that shit to yourself or whatever, then you shouldn't be dating. That's all I gotta say.
Right. Well,
Just,
yeah, it's very, that relationship is separate from who you are as a person now
yeah.
and where you headed. I mean, I think sometimes people ask and you just have to navigate that carefully. But I want to go back, like, even if you've gotten to that point of divorce, may not be as heartbroken at that point, but I know with my second marriage, I spent a lot of time in that marriage grieving my marriage because I kind of felt like things were slowly declining. And so I think even if you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm done now, and I'm not, you're not feeling those feelings of love. So the grief is different, but I think that's because sometimes you can grieve during the relationship too.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah. And so it's just different circumstances around how, but then that also makes for a really hard end, because I think probably the last 2 years of my second marriage, and we were together for over a decade, it just, I spent time silently probably grieving to myself, knowing that I didn't know if we were going to be able to repair things enough, and just feeling internally. And I think for women, we get gut feelings. I know men do too, but I think as women, we're really taught to silence them a lot more. But I think if deep down, you know Like you just know. And it may take a while to get to a point where you feel comfortable acting on the knowing, but don't ignore that voice and take some time to explore it through journaling, something that gives you an outlet where you can at least, talk to it amongst yourself. Um, and try to give yourself the leniency and decency to recognize that your gut instinct is really important. It's really important. And, I don't know, it's grief comes in so many different forms and fashion. And it's like you said, it's like you're that vase that gets broken and then you put yourself together. And I mean, you can use super glue, but you're never quite the same.
Never,
Right.
never.
You might have to add some mosaic or some shit to make it pretty again. And and redo it a little differently, right? But we all are just trying, I think, to strive in the world to keep ourselves intact and not have to go through that process of being broken again.
I would suggest to people, I don't want to be petty, but like going through I don't have a lot of enemies or whatever, but like for the ones that I do have, I wish them a terrible divorce. Right? Like I hope you go through this shit. Right? Because like I don't think that I'm not going to say that I'm not going to be the same. I think that I'm going to be a lot of things, like people talk about like war or whatever and like, giving you PTSD and all that other shit. I think that like marriage can give you this shit too, whatever the fuck. Like
it
can
absolutely can. Especially,
it can make you,
go ahead.
It can make you emotionally gun shy as fuck. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, like I would never do this shit again. Ever. Ever, ever. Like, I wish I could go back in time and grab me off the altar. You know what I'm saying? But like, it's, I don't regret certain things, but like a lot of other things I do. I know it's not for me anymore. And I'm okay with that. I know that like, with me, I think part of it is like, I don't like to fail at shit. I'm not good at failing. Right. And I think that's just like some dude shit I got to get over. Right. Some ego shit. But like, I would never, ever, like, if somebody asked me like, yo, should I get married? I would tell them to like, yo, read all the fine fucking print. Read it all. Like, I would say no to anybody, but like, if you love that person enough to like, go into the shitty casino at 55% loss, at 55% loss rate. You know what I'm saying? If you want to bet on the Pirates going to the World Series this year, then good luck, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Good fucking luck. Like, that's what marriage is right now. Marriage is like thinking that the Pirates are going to go to the World Series.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I would say too, like, don't be fooled by what you see on social media. There's a lot of people out there wagging stuff on social media where like everything is bliss and joy and happiness. And they're not talking about like all the private conversations that happen in the background so that those moments are possible where it's uncomfortable, where it's awkward, where you're working through shit, where you're trying to navigate, setting up boundaries and making sure that needs are met and just working that dynamic of finding ways for two people to communicate. There's so much that happens, and that's just every day-to-day stuff. That doesn't even count like, because I'm an intimacy coach, like communication around intimacy and how that gets impacted if you can't communicate in the day-to-day, and then how that impacts your relationship moving forward too. There's so much, and that's just in regular relationships. But like you said, like marriage ups the ante because there is this whole other legal future and financial future and custody future if you have kids, and assets and all these things that then come into play in different ways. And just, know what you're coming into, know what that looks like, have conversations with people that are married, and, ask them to give you an honest picture of
Yeah.
what that might look like. I mean, I'm at the point where, like, if I ever date again, I'm gonna take fucking references. Like, I'm gonna be like, you need to provide 2 references that I can call before I'm even gonna have dinner with you, because I want to know how your shit checks out well in advance, So I don't know, like, just do your diligence. But at the same time, like, I'm like I want to believe in love. I don't believe that anymore that love can conquer all things. And I also
No, it can't.
believe that nor
That's
it
just
should.
that's just words.
Yeah, they're just words. And I think there's times where it's really inappropriate for love to be used in that manner to justify things. Um, but I do believe in love, and I believe that, I don't know that we're believed to necessarily be like completely islands to ourselves and alone. But I'm older too, so what I get from my relationships is different than I would have gotten 20 years ago. And, like, I have a lot of nurturing friends. I am completely in love with one of my dogs. Like, she's my bestie. Like, she really might be the one. So,
See, that's why I love dogs. I don't really fuck cats. I'm a dog, man. Dogs love you.
yeah. And so, like, I feel I may not have like a partner, and I may not have that presence with like another person in my life or in my bed, but I don't feel unloved, and
Yeah,
I have my kids, and I actually feel like I have an abundance of love in my life right now, which is
yeah,
amazing. And more than that, like, I have an abundance of love for myself at the moment that I didn't have 4 months ago. So that to me is really precious and priceless, and really, to me, worth kind of changing the aspect of what I felt maybe I should be getting that love from. So just do your homework. Know who you're marrying, know what you're getting into. You don't need to hire a PI necessarily. I wouldn't say that, but just take the time.
yeah. I'm
Um,
I'm having a weird time, right? Like because like we're both like in our late. I ain't gonna say how old we grown as hell. We both grown as hell. Um, I've been out here a little bit longer. I'm in certain ways, I'm having a really, really good time, right? And in other ways, I'm like, I'm not having a bad time. I'm having something, right? I'm having something. You know what I mean? So I don't think that like people who this is weird. People who are like in like marriages for a long time and like the shit goes south or whatever the fuck. Sometimes like you might see one of the other people and like they're completely devastated and can't get their life back together or whatever the fuck. And then like on the other hand, there's people who are like, oh, I'm good, I'm thriving or whatever the fuck. I think I'm somewhere. I'm like, I think I'm okay, right? That's all I'm saying. I mean, but it's taken, and like you know me, it's taken some time to get to this point.
yeah,
It takes a minute.
it takes time. It's a commitment to yourself that you need to make. I don't think it's healthy to, even in just a regular relationship, to just bounce out of something and bounce into something else. I think sometimes there's extraordinary circumstances where maybe that might work, but I think you're probably just ignoring and not dealing with something else, and eventually everything comes to the surface. So, one way or another, it's going to end up there. And it's better, I think, for you to deal with that shit when you're by yourself, alone. And then you can really like, because otherwise I think you end up repeating the same narrative to some degree, you know?
Yeah.
Like I know that I didn't deal with shit for some of my previous marriages enough, maybe. I didn't start going to therapy till after the second one. And I thought I was in a pretty good place, and I don't know, I questioned that sometimes. Like, was I really ready at that point? I felt like I was ready, but I
You
don't
know
know.
what they say? Like, what's weird is like people say shit like, well, you're never going to be ready, which I think to some extent that's true. But like I said, like, me, I'm a gunslinger. I walk into the saloon with my hand on my pistols. So, so there's some shit I can't say, but like, don't, what? Don't deny yourself happiness is all I'm saying. Don't deny
No.
yourself moments of joy. If that's what you know by yourself or with somebody else, you never know what's going to happen.
Right. Right.
You might meet. I'm not going to say you might meet the someone who's perfect for you, whatever, but you might meet somebody who's good to you and good for you in a moment that otherwise you would spend alone in deep contrition or
Right.
some shit. You know what I mean? So don't like I'm closed off to a lot of things, but I'm also like open, to possibilities.
I think following your joy is probably the best navigation and compass that you can have for that process. I think if you're truly following what gives you joy without hurting other people, that it's really hard to go wrong with that.
That's where I'm at. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
I can't say everything. You can't say everything, but like, yeah, enjoy shit. Like there's life after divorce. That's what I'm trying to get at. There's life and there's other people after divorce. Shit during your divorce was, and in some cases, you dirty motherfuckers during your marriage.
Right.
But like my thing is, don't deny yourself, moments or whatever, because I think too, while you're going through a divorce or whatever, depending on who you are, you'll start doubting yourself, right? You'll start. I mean, if you don't doubt yourself anyway, it doesn't matter who the fuck you are in moments, then you ain't human. But I'm saying, like moments like this where when you're really going through it, you can have a negative self narrative, right? That can get really ingrained. And I think that if you go down that route, I mean, you can get depressed or whatever, but like you can have a lot of negative self-talk and a negative self-image, which can, which can also be toxic to yourself. Like you can be toxic to yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So, find something that gives you, like a friend of mine, she'll text me and say like, what made you smile today? Right. And I'm like, well, that made me smile or this made me smile or whatever. And then sometimes it can be a person that makes you smile. And if it's a person that makes you smile or whatever, then, then enjoy that person and enjoy that moment. Right. But be careful.
Yeah. Again, just follow your joy without creating any harm. Do no harm, right? Should be the
Do
rule
no
for
harm.
everything. First and
Do no
foremost.
harm. I'll be following my joy. Fuck that. I fucks with my joy for real. Fucks with your joy.
Fuck with your joy. Any other parting advice that you would give about making, this decision of whether or not to leave a marriage?
Yeah, real talk. Once you get to that point and you feel that, like you said, it's like a job. And I've said this, I'm like, this is a shit job right here. if you get to that point where you know this is what you want to do it from a sane, stable place. Do it from a place that's not malicious. You know what I mean? Like, don't approach it in a malicious manner. Do it with good counsel. Do it from a place where, and I really do mean this. Do it from a place where you feel that you can walk away from it and not necessarily feel good, but be content on how it's ends. You know what I mean? I can't say too much, but like, do it from a place where you're not trying to hurt that person down the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree. I think just trying to keep in mind like compassion and kindness. You can't really let go if you're not willing to engage with some sort of forgiveness, um, for either the other person or yourself, especially.
Yeah.
So I think above all else, being kind to yourself in the moment, recognizing that failure does not have to be a negative, bad thing. Because as you said earlier, sometimes it points you in the direction of new opportunities and growth that are going to serve you better for the person you've become over time. And I think, especially for women, listening to that inner voice and that inner gut that tells you, you know, that if this isn't the place you should be, that it's time to find a way to engage a new narrative and find a way to better serve yourself. And we didn't really talk about this, but for me too, like, I have never wanted to see any of my ex husbands unhappy. Like, I really wish them all the best and I wish them all joy and I want them to find their happiness because I want to find my happiness. I don't want anyone to, you shouldn't want that person to be miserable. You want to hurt. And even if, and I say that with, there's always an asterisk of like, there are certain circumstances where people are really abusive and I don't want to encourage like entertaining that in a mental space because that's a whole different thing. But if you're able to, recognizing and saying like, I really do hope this person finds like happiness and joy because I want to be able to seek and find happiness and joy for myself. And it shouldn't be exclusive to just you, no matter whatever damage has been done in that marriage. Because I don't think you can really set yourself free if you're harboring any kind of like ill feelings or negativity or intent that counteract your own joy. I mean, you're always going to have feelings. You do have to you have to recognize and deal with your anger. And I think you should feel your feels, feel them 100,000%. Let yourself stay in bed if you need to for a day, cry it out, yell in the pillow, do whatever you need to do to process and let those feelings come through so you acknowledge them. It'll make it much easier in the long run than ignoring them and trying to push them away because they're just going to come back until you deal with them. But at the same time, just recognizing that like when you are ending a relationship, it really is also opening up a world of opportunity for new joy and new happiness for both of you, and just wanting to wish that other person as much as you want for yourself, because I do believe like putting that kind of mental space out into the world is important. Just follow your gut and your heart, and if it's not in a good space, then do yourselves the favor to make yourselves happy, show your kids the example of seeking and finding happiness, showing them that it doesn't have to be a failure if things don't work and really teaching them to leave relationships that no longer serve them. I think, again, that's so important for their mental health as well. So,
Amen.
amen.
I had some joy on Wednesday.
Oh, Ernest, I love you so much. This has been an awesome episode. Just again, for all of our listeners, even if it's just one, we love you and thank you. And from the bottom of our heart, if you find yourself in darkness, as always, we hope it's in the shadow of love.